I just love this thing, right? Writing and feeling more deeply through writing and thinking more clearly. Like, I feel like everything makes sense. Hi, my name is Dshamilja Roshani. I am a poet, writer and performer of German-Iranian descent, currently based in Joburg. So I've always written, right? Like, it was always back then, being a child, like a way how I understood myself, you know, made sense of myself, made sense of the world around me. And poetry just happened to come across, I came across poetry and sort of like fell in love with the complexity of it, the denseness of it, you know, how much it can carry. But then obviously performing, you know, became a different step and a different challenge, which I got into much later, I think. But writing has always been part of me. I think it will always be part of me, no matter, you know, whether people listen to it or not. That's a second step, you know. But the main thing is it helps me to make sense of things, you know, of myself and the world. So, I mean, I think because writing is the way how I make sense of things, it's always going to be me just writing about what I live through, right? What I experience, what my life looks like at particular moments in time. So I don't know how to write from a perspective that's not me, you know. It's always going to be me as the foundation, me experiencing, witnessing things, feeling things, thinking through them, which doesn't mean that I can't connect to other people in my writing, but it's still going to be through my perspective, you know. And so with that, I guess, like, a lot of my work speaks to different elements of identity, you know, of my identity, to queerness, to gender, to questions of home, belonging, you know, different cultures, different influences. But it's not limited to that, you know. If I'm going through a heartbreak, I'm going to write about the heartbreak. Yeah, and I mean, I draw inspiration from, you know, everyday life in that regard. But also obviously from, you know, my influences, from people whose work I look up to and admire, and, you know, who have inspired my or shaped my way of understanding writing and this craft of writing and performing. So I think Germany as a whole and Berlin as a microcosm doesn't really have as much of a rich poetry scene, right, and spoken word. I don't think it exists, you know, and especially Berlin, since it's like an international space with lots of different cultures and diversity. But I think the culture is very limited to, like, oh, you're doing some spoken word, you know, some open mics somewhere. Okay, cool. But it's not really, like, people don't understand the essence of poetry, in my opinion, as they do in South Africa, right, where it's much more part of a broader culture. You know, you have poetry in music, in theaters, in, you know, films even, right, and ads. Like, I feel like poetry has this potential to be everywhere, and in as much as there's still a long way to go in South Africa and building that industry, I think it's already much further. Like, it has already achieved more. Whereas in Berlin, it's much more of a niche, you know, and people sort of like limiting it to that niche. But I think it's also a question of language, because, you know, obviously if you write in a different language than English, you know, let's say in German, you'd have a different audience and a different access to different spaces. But I think in general, poetry feels way more vivid in South Africa, you know, more like it's a living thing, a breathing thing. You know, in Germany, it often, at least to me, you know, studying it at school and all these things they make you do, it feels like this dead thing that, you know, old white men 200 years ago were writing, and now you're studying it. Yeah, so I think in that regard, like, I'm very inspired by the scene in Joburg. I think there's a lot of innovation, you know, a lot of, like, new thoughts and ideas that people are implementing. And yeah, man, but also eventually, like, the hope is obviously to merge both of them, you know, to perhaps have, and people are already doing that. People are already traveling, you know, from Joburg to Berlin and to other places, and just like spreading this art form, right, and connecting. Man, I mean, I just love this thing, right? Writing and feeling more deeply through writing and thinking more clearly. Like, I feel like everything makes sense, you know? And so with that, with the writing aspect, the performance aspect, I feel like poetry can take all these different forms and shapes and can occupy different spaces and has the potential to do so much, right? And I feel like we're not there yet, you know? I want poets to be making it in the world, you know, to be superstars, but also still be good writers, you know, not to sell out with like some cheap writing, which I think does happen to an extent. So obviously one hope and aim is to be able to live of it, you know, to make a career, and to just pursue this thing fully. And I mean, yeah, just you know, use it to experience the world, different places. I mean, people are already doing it also. Shout out to Vili, for example, who is touring the world right now, you know, as a poet, as the current world slam champion, I believe. But I think it's still, you know, you've got your individual people, but for this whole art form to really grow, I feel like we still need to put work in. That's my inspiration. So people can find me on social media. I'm Dshamilja Roshani on all social media platforms. Dshamilja is Dshamilja, and Roshani, Roshani. I'm on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, but I'm not really active. And on Spotify. I've got a poetry album, The Pride of Water, out on Spotify and on all other streaming platforms.
The rain pours and pours. Worlds merge before your mind's eye into a single river. Your sight flickers and the rain pours. Your spine quivers and the rain pours. The earth roars and the light shivers and the rain pours. Pounding your name, sounding like a god from the future. The rain pours and dampens your salt. A sunken dream in a dried up ocean. The rain pours and nurtures your thirst. Beating and knocking, speaking to you. Saying, come out to seek. Not that which you want, but that which you need. Not the source of the river, but the source of the sea. Come out to be what you failed to run from. Come out to yourself. Come out to me.